All right, so we're just going to get started. For those of you who do join, again, we do have a recording of this going. And if you're comfortable having your cameras on, you're more than welcome to have them on. For sake of you knowing who's talking and kind of putting a face to the name, we are going to keep ours on. So whatever you are comfortable with. So my name is Clare Nee. I'm one of the assistant directors for undergraduate admissions at Rensselaer. I'm also the liaison for the School of Humanities, Arts, and Social Sciences. So if you have any HOS-related questions, I can be kind of your point of contact on the admissions end, but we'll also give you a couple more within the School of HOS as well. If you're having any connection difficulties as we continue on, try to refresh your browser. If you do have the Zoom app, that one is probably best for optimal connection. But we will get started in just a moment. I think that we've had all of our participants join, or just about, but I will be on throughout the entirety of the presentation. If you have any admissions questions, you can ask those, but we will leave a section for Q&A at the end, and you can kind of unmute and ask them as we have space for that. But yes, if you have any admissions questions, I'm here, and then anything HOS related, I am going to pass it off to Raquel to get things started with design, innovation, and society. So thank you all for joining us, and congratulations on your acceptance.
Thanks, Claire. I hope everybody can hear me okay. Thank you to whoever activated the closed captions. If you need closed captions for any form of accessibility, please feel free to turn that on as well. That should be on the menu for you. I am so delighted to be here with you all today. My name is Professor Raquel Velho. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Science and Technology Studies, where I'm also the undergraduate program director. What I have today for everybody is this webinar on design, innovation, and society, which is one of 3 majors offered by the Department of Science and Technology Studies. The Design, Innovation, and Society program is a design program. We call ourselves design agnostic. And what we mean by design agnostic is that though our primary inspiration and the primary type of work that we undertake in the program is industrial and product design, we actually want to leave it relatively open so that we can teach a lot of other fields of design as well, including design for the built environment, such as urbanism, as well as fashion design, as well as other forms of design that students bring in as interests as well. So what I'm going to do is I have about 15 minutes of me talking time. I may at times be interrupted by my dog, who is just sleeping on the couch next to me. So I apologize if he interrupts at any moment. And after those 15 minutes, we can have a little bit more of a Q&A so that you can ask me any questions that you have about the design program and our approaches to design work. And to ask any questions, you can either use the chat feature that Zoom has, or when we open it up to Q&A, you are more than welcome to ask your question by unmuting yourself. And if you want to be on video as well to do that, please feel free to do so. Please just note that this is being recorded, and we will be uploading this to the STS department's YouTube, as well as possibly admissions work. So if you'd rather remain anonymous in that way, perhaps you would rather put your questions in the chat. So without further ado, Design, Innovation, and Society is not your typical design program. We pride ourselves in producing socially conscious engineers, design professionals, and creative thinkers. The way that we think about our design coursework is a way of exploring the work of technology development, scientific inquiry, and the work that we do as humans within a society. We like to weave personal, professional, and social values into a problem-based learning sequence that imparts a well-rounded skill set in design work and critical thinking, from problem-solving approaches to ideation work to concept selection, finally to refined prototyping abilities. DIS was designed for dual majoring. In essence, the way that this program was designed is it fits within your RPI education in such a way that within the 4 years that you are here, our coursework complements the coursework that you are doing in another field and another program. We have a variety of dual majors. The vast majority of our students are dual majoring in mechanical engineering. And when I say vast, I mean probably about 80% of our dual majors. But we also have students that are dual majoring in business and management, building sciences, communication and design, and sustainability studies as well. Now, it's important to note when we say dual majoring that what this means is that the programs are effectively slotting together really beautifully and effectively so that you do only graduate within those 4 years. If you were double majoring, which may be another term that you hear in a lot of admissions conversations, it means that you're actually doing twice the number of credits. So to dual major is a way to get a lot more bang for your buck in education because you effectively leave with 2 degrees. DIS majors in our courses, and you can see these pictures of students, Alina and Jack and Zoe in our studio space, uses user research, participatory design, and early prototyping abilities to develop various solutions as individuals as well as in design teams. Now, what's really fantastic about the space that we have, the studio that you see in the picture, is that it's a really modulable space that we can move the chairs and desks around. It's completely covered in whiteboards. We have a few other pictures that you can see that. So students can be doing real-time ideation and real-time collaboration in that space. And it really becomes students' home base. So I'll talk about that studio space and students' experience in a second. So our design studios are importantly iterative. And what I mean by that is it starts with a very concentrated and scaffolded series of studios that I'll show you in a second, where students are leveling up their skill set in terms of design abilities and capacities. They also reflect the diversity of design, right? And I mentioned that we're design agnostic. So the purpose really is for you to not leave as a capable industrial designer, but to leave as a capable, well-rounded designer, where you're able to be in interaction in a future design studio space with a variety of design disciplines and design professionals. All of our studios address real-world social and environmental challenges. This is one of the huge benefits of being in the School of Humanities, Arts, and Social Sciences and being taught by professors such as myself or Professor James Malazita or Professor Brandon Costello-Kuhn, who are all incredible educators who are thinking about not just what design is good for in terms of, say, marketable for, but also what it's good for in terms of who is it including or excluding in the process of its design. So I'm actually an expert in designing for accessibility for disability. I have worked for a very long time thinking about accessibility and transportation, collaborating with engineers, thinking about problem solving for accessibility for wheelchair users. And that's something that a lot of civil engineers end up not having as much of an opportunity to think about. So when they collaborate with designers and scholars such as myself that are often thinking about the real world impact of design, it means that we think about the real world impact on humans. Now, all of our design studios run through the capacities of problem definition, concept generation, and prototyping. And ultimately, the goal is for us to develop innovative environments, products, and experiences. Now, what you see in front of you in this slide is actually just the structure of the program. So what you have in blue all the way to the left is our core studio sequence. These are very creatively called Studios 1, 2, and 3. And we call them scaffolded because they're really building each time on top of skills that you acquired in the studio before. Studio 1, which we call Design and Representation, is basically the introductory design course for any one of our students. The idea of Studio 1 is we set the baseline, the terms of engagement. How do you interact and work in a studio? How do you interact and work in collaborative and interdisciplinary teams of students? And how do you learn how to do representation work? Now, representation here is meant to be a stand-in both for representation in terms of sketching abilities. We have guest instructors coming from the Department of Arts to teach basic sketching courses. You're required to keep a sketchbook throughout Studio 1, but we also mean representation in terms of who do you represent? Who are you? And what is your community? So that we can really effectively ask the question of what is a problem and who is it a problem for? So we're always teaching our students to think about, who is this a problem for? The user becomes the center of the question every step of the way. The types of prototyping that you do in Studio One are extremely low resolution. We work with cardboard and we work with paper and we work with scavenged materials. So by the end of Studio One, you've learned how to go through an iterative design process, having undertaken 3 design studios or 3 design projects. And then from there, you go one step up into Studio Two. So in Studio Two, we focus on design and identity, and I'll go into a little bit more focus on Studio Two in a second. And there you will level up your skills yet again. And then in Studio 3, you level it up yet again. So I'll go into those in a second. I have a couple of images of projects to show you as well. Once you've finished your scaffolded studio sequence, you take 2 advanced studios. These are generally thematic in theme. And then you also take your senior project, which is the senior studio. It's a self-directed capstone project that students have to select a problem of their choosing and solve it by the end of the semester. These 6 studios are the required studios from any design, innovation, and society student. On top of those, students take seminar courses that are listed in pink to the right. So that is science, technology, and society, design, culture, and society, and then 2 advanced science and technology studies courses, which can be on a diversity of topics. We have, for example, historians of technology that teach the history of American technology. We have designers that teach a course called Politics of Design. We have a sociologist who teaches a fascinating course called Foods, Farms, and Famine. So we have a variety of courses that are actively getting your students to think about what is the interaction between science, technology, and society. The skills that we impart, of course, we always need a little bullet list of what you get out of this program. So of course, critical thinking skills, problem solving abilities. You learn how to tackle the design process intimately. You learn how to do user experience research and testing, ethnography work, sketching and computer aided design, human-centered design principles, prototyping, interdisciplinary teamwork, project management, and so much else. All of our courses really get students to think and do social analysis at the intersections of design, technology, and society. Students are constantly having to do oral presentations of the project as the project advances through different stages, meaning that students leave as extremely accomplished public presenters and public speakers as well. So here's a couple of examples from our projects, or our studios. So I have over here Studio One, which, as I mentioned, is the introduction to design processes. We start explorations on how design and society influence one another. It establishes basic principles of design and visual communication, and we work on rapid, low-fidelity prototyping with cardboard, paper, and scavenged materials. Now, the example I have from you is the plant chandelier that was developed by a team of students a few years ago. So this is actually for project 3. I teach Studio One. I'm very intimate with all of these projects. I love talking about these. This is my favorite project. My favorite project is designing for the future. Students have to set the parameters of the future, what they imagine the future will be like in, say, 50, 100, or 150 years from now. And then they need to develop an artifact that responds to the constraints of this world of the future. Now, students in this particular project said that we would be living underground in 250 years' time. And as a result, they developed this plant chandelier that would actually be something that would be a decorative item in homes that are underground. So on top of providing light for the plants, it would also be providing an aesthetic experience for the users where they get to have interaction with plants, whereas they wouldn't perhaps have otherwise. In Studio 2, we then level up these skills. As you can see, there's this children's kitchen series is actually rendered of these prototypes. I believe this has been rendered in Unreal Engine. which is taught by my colleague, Professor James Malazita in Studio 2. And this is where students begin to develop a design identity, acquire higher level skills in design work, including computer-aided design work, do more user experience and design methods work, and also start prototyping in higher fidelity, so 3D printers, clay, and wood. In Studio 3, we again take those skills and level them up even more. So now students aren't just thinking about user experience, developing specific artifacts. We actually start getting our students to think about design and complexity and start thinking about the engineering design process as well, because so many of our majors are engineers. We want them to grapple with the engineering design process in very particular ways, and even in some ways that are very critical. What is it that engineering design processes leave out and leave unquestioned? So we also start asking about the role of design in complex networks and systems. Why is it that we can't just think about design artifacts in a vacuum, right? There's a whole production chain that comes in the process of creating an artifact. It needs to interact with other things in its environment. So let's take the example of the Children's Kitchen series. Like any item in a kitchen, it doesn't just stay on the counter, right? We often want to put these things away. So we need to think about how artifacts are constantly interacting with the world around us. In Studio 3, we also start teaching ethnographic and social scientific research methods, and the type of construction that students do of prototypes starts getting to a really high fidelity with work on plastic, resin, and metals. I mentioned the advanced studios. These are called studios A, B, and C. They're advanced studios that reflect emerging themes in design, research, and practice, and they have a topical focus that highlights instructors' design background and research. So, for example, my colleague Brandon Costello-Kuhn, who teaches Studio A every summer, is a fantastic regenerative designer, which means that the type of work that he does is really focused on minimizing waste in the entire cycle of creation of an artifact. So when he teaches Studio A, and he does this over the summer, so he gets to interact with a lot of local farmers in upstate New York in the work that he develops, he teaches this through a focus and a lens on regenerative design. Another example is Professor Brian Toll, who teaches Studio B. He just taught it on monument design. Brian Toll is in fact an incredible designer. He is at the helm of Toll Studio, if you ever want to look him up. And he has designed the Irish Hunger Memorial that is just across from where World Trade Center was. So he actually taught an entire course on how to develop and design monuments. How do we do memory practices through the design environment? And the team of students that were in Studio B actually developed a project that's called the Charles Knoll Walking Memorial. And they're currently working with the city of Troy to actually implement it officially within the city. So it's really exciting to see how our studio courses don't just remain in the studio. They really begin to have and create a life of their own. Studios A, B, and C, again, there are 3 of them, but students only have to do 2. Students select 2 that they are here on campus for. And sometimes students do end up doing the 3. That's generally on a case-by-case situation if students want to use this as an advanced course, but more of a nitty-gritty conversation perhaps for another time. And finally, senior project. This is actually a course that I teach in the spring every year, and it's one of my favorite things to teach. Senior project is an individual capstone project that blends hands-on design practice with social scientific research. Students create not only a high-fidelity design artifact, but they also have to write a design research thesis that provides in-depth detail and analysis, a reflection on the design process, as well as an accompanying poster. And we have annual poster sessions of our students' work, which actually just happened last week for me and was just such an absolute joy. If accepted students are curious about some of those projects, please just ask that in the Q&A, and I will be happy to talk about some of the examples of work that we have going on. So a note on DIS student experience. I mentioned the studio that we have. It's called the Bert Swersey Inventor Studio, or Sage 2211, if we feel like just giving you the name and the number. It's a hybrid open floor collaboration and ideation studio classroom. Right next door to it is the fabrication lab that is helmed by Mike Rosato, who is an absolute incredible designer and worker in his own in his own capacity, who does a lot of advising work with our students as well. And he runs a huge lab that includes 3D printers and resin printers and laser cutters. In the level just below, there's a metal shop with a soldering shop as well that's helmed by Abe Ferraro, also an incredible artist. So like students have not just faculty, they have staff that are incredibly well-versed in doing design advising work that is open, right? Like students that are working on their projects, they can come work on the projects in the studio. There's a collaborative workspace behind the studio with materials access for them as well. Our DIS cohorts are of about 30 students that progress together over their 4 years. This allows them to form really close friendships and networks. They collaborate in not just in their classwork for these classes. We always see them actually sat in the library or the student union working on projects for other courses together, where they end up finding one another, or they create study groups together, and they stay in touch with their cohorts for many, many years after graduation. And I'll speak to that a little bit more in just a minute. I just wanted to give you a few student quotes about their experiences with the program. I think one that always hits me is the one all the way on the right. DIS was the best academic choice I ever made. The class size is small, so you get to know everyone in class as well as the teachers. You work on meaningful projects that you are passionate about. You learn top-notch design methods through experiential learning. And that really is what we value, is experiential learning. It's hands-on, practice-based teaching and learning. And I think it's really important to underline that in like a world where often we kind of believe that watching these videos perhaps is enough to learn about something. We really like getting our hands dirty, right? And I really emphasize in the classroom the importance of failure when you're learning. Like the point of prototyping, and the point of prototyping early and often, is because they're supposed to fail. Your prototypes are supposed to fall apart because that's how they teach you what you need to improve upon to make this a feasible, usable, important product and artifact. So that's one of our guiding philosophies in the classroom as well, is fail early and fail often, and you are going to come out stronger at the other end. A few examples of alumni and where they are now. I recently updated these, so I wanted to just kind of shine light on these particular individuals. Besides the ones in the middle, the 4 to the left and to the right are people that I'm actually actively working on and in communication with at least once a month, and I'll discuss why in a second. But the DIS curriculum prepares our graduates to work effectively in a wide variety of contexts, including design consultancies, nonprofits, corporate contexts, educational institutions. Some of them go on to graduate school, and some of them even go on to do government research. So here's a few examples. We have Alana Weiss, who just graduated and went straight into this position as associate product developer at Shark Ninja. Corinne Rezidar actually recently reached out to me and has just changed positions. So she's no longer at Splunk, but she graduated straight with a position as UX designer at Splunk out in California. Izzy Kane, who graduated in 2019, is a service designer at IBM. Daniel Faxon, who graduated in 2020, is an innovation technologist at Helix Innovation Center, which is actually attached to Emerson. And then right in the middle, we have what a lot of people kind of see as the pride and joy of not just DIS, but of the Inventor Studio sequence at Rensselaer. Eben Bayer and Gavin McIntyre are the CEO and COO of Ecovative Design, which is a mycelium-based product packaging company. They've actually started expanding into beyond product packaging, but really the heart of their company is sustainable and compostable packaging work. Now, I mentioned that I work very closely with Izzy and with Damiel and Corinne as well, and Alana on something every month, and it's the DIS Alumni Network. We develop really strong cohorts and really strong alumni networks, and we're super proud that we maintain these long-lasting relationships with our students well after they graduate. It's thanks to the work of our dedicated alumni that we now have a network that we actually use to throw these professionalizing events for our current students. So these are 3 out of 4 examples. We started this work in 2020-ish, 2021. You know, something happened around 2020 and everybody was online trying to find ways to connect with one another. And this was our way of doing it. We're going to plan a big celebration of our 25th anniversary of Design, Innovation, and Society next year. So I'm really looking forward to that. And if you're an accepted student, and you come to our program, we look forward to celebrating 25 years with you. We also now have monthly student body meetings with our DIS students. We have our final one this coming Wednesday. The theme is Destroy, Prototype, Destroy. So everybody is bringing their prototypes for final destruction and celebration so that we can celebrate the graduation of our seniors. And all of that is thanks to the energy and ambition of our alumni network. All right, that's my spiel. If you're interested to declare DIS as a prospective or accepted student, you can add DIS as a dual if you haven't already been accepted into the program, simply by either getting into communication with Claire or by reaching out to Kaylee Aston, whose email is in these slides. So galbrk3@rpi.edu. That's one way you can add the dual over the summer. That's all you really have to do. If you decide, hey, I don't really know whether DIS really is for me quite yet, that's totally okay. You can still come to RPI and figure out what it is that you want to do, or you're very comfortable in mechanical engineering. But let's say you do decide that you would like to add DIS, then I have to tell you that there is an internal application process if you decide to add DIS further down the line. That's because we have become over-enrolled as a program in the past couple of years. So we do have this internal application process. So if you have any questions about that while you're here, you should reach out to, sorry, not Brian Woods, but Kaylee Aston there as well. But I think I'll stop talking. I think I went on a little bit longer than I wanted to. So I'm going to stop sharing in case anybody would like to come put on the video to ask a question, or please feel free to just put questions in the chat. And I'm going to have a sip of my drink.
And while you have a sip of your drink, I'm going to be putting the contact information for everyone to refer back to for myself and Kaylee Aston if you are interested in adding DIS. So we do have our first question in the chat. Could you please elaborate on what the DIS curriculum is for those who are majoring in engineering for the Haas requirements?
Great question. Thank you. So the way that the DIS curriculum fits if you are majoring in engineering is that it effectively becomes your Haas requirements. So every degree at Rensselaer has what is called the Haas core. Those are 20 to 24, usually 24 credits that you are required to take in the School of Humanities, Arts, and Social Sciences. So if you declare DIS as a dual, effectively DIS becomes your Haas core. Now, this does mean that you lose a little bit of flexibility in terms of your free requirements. You could see that as a loss of flexibility. I like to see it, and I know that this is perhaps telling of my personality. I like to see it as additional structure. It enables a lot of depth in your engagement with Haas courses. So they click in together perfectly. I see a question. Do you have any stats on the job prospects of students that have graduated with a DIS degree? Don't really know what type of stats would be helpful in terms of like how many students have jobs straight after graduating. Unfortunately, I don't have specific numbers. I do, however, have our survey that we recently ran of alumni in terms of like where students ended up. And the list is really significant in terms of ending up in design research, ending up in engineering design, ending up in UX design positions, and a really wide diversity of companies as well. So we have students that have ended up at Hasbro, designing toys. We have students that ended up in Shark Ninja and IBM, as I've already mentioned, but we've also had students that have had positions at Tesla. We have somebody currently at Peloton. We have somebody at Tiffany & Co. So there's really a wide range of positions that students may end up at. I'll also add, we have a lot of active Discords. If anybody is interested in just kind of jumping into like either the Design at RPI Discord, which is run by Design Innovation and Society students, or even into my own studio Discord, please just drop me an email. I will put my email in the chat, and I am more than happy to send you a temporary invitation to either one of those Discords.
And you could also feel free to unmute if you're comfortable asking the questions verbally, or you can put them in the chat. Is the acceptance into DIS competitive?
So as we currently stand, I'm not entirely sure on what numbers we have. We have 21 positions. I know that we accepted 29 students. We're not sure on what the yield is. So what we have to do is figure out how many students will have actually put in their deposit to come to RPI that are DIS students. And then we'll figure out how many seats we have left for students that choose to declare DIS as a dual or over the summer. So that's something that we'll have to figure out. Generally speaking, it is a little competitive. It's not like, 50% acceptance rate or anything like that. But depending on how our yield ends up this summer, it may in fact be a little bit more competitive than it usually is. And we're just seeing tremendous growth in this program at the moment. So question on what is the workload like to do the dual major with mechanical engineering? And this is a really good question. It is feasible and very enjoyable. So and I don't have those quotes in this because it feels like I'm talking trash about mechanical engineering, which I would never do. But one of the things that we have found with this program is that it actually works as a retention mechanism for a lot of students in mechanical engineering. So this is called by my colleague, Dean Newsma, who is out at the Colorado School of Mines, the engineering bait and switch, where a lot of students that are brought into mechanical engineering in particular, but engineering in general from high school are often students that are in high schools with design programs. They're in high schools with robotics programs that do a lot of hands-on tinkering, right? A lot of taking things apart and putting it back together in different ways and just playing with a lot of materials. And then they go to an engineering program and they start realizing that their first 2 to 3 semesters are a lot of physics and a lot of math and not a whole bunch of hands-on creative problem solving the way that you may have wanted to do as an engineering student, and that you will do. It just takes a little bit longer to get there. So what we do with DIS is we're already offering that from the very first day in the studio. So as a dual between mechanical engineering and design, innovation, and society, it actually becomes pleasurable to come to the studio and do the type of work in the studio that you're doing and work on these projects with your team. So the workload is not insignificant. There will be a lot of studio-based projects that you will have deliverables for, and it will be crunch time from time to time. However, I can almost guarantee that you are actually going to enjoy it and you will enjoy the time in the studio. Just wanted to say a word that I appreciate that it's also like dinner time for a lot of people in the East Coast and Central Time. So I really appreciate people taking time of like family time together to watch one of these webinars. It means a lot.
Right. Oh, we do have another question. Perfect. Currently enrolled a course called Innovation Studio, which is a capstone course similar to the product design. I was wondering how much of this course was modeling compared to how much would be building and tinkering.
Awesome. This is in high school. That sounds really great. So how much of this course was modeling compared to how much would be building and tinkering? That's a really good question. I think it's largely going to depend on the studio. So in Studio 1, there will be, I teach you how to do design pinups, right? Which is conceptual sketches, high quality conceptual sketches of design concepts. And we spend some time working on what is a good professional pinup, like how do you do that type of work? This isn't on CAD, this is pen and paper, right? This is a lot of hand work. But I like students to go relatively quickly from concept sketching into actual prototyping work and this building and tinkering. I think that it's a really important part of the design process. A lot of my colleagues agree. If you are somebody, however, who really likes modeling, you can always be working, especially in studios 2 and 3, to up those levels and really focus on those types of skills. This is something that students have come to say to us a lot as they, wrap up their degree, is that they really appreciate that faculty in DIS are generally really welcoming and open to working with student interests. So oftentimes, even if the design prompt doesn't perfectly enable you to do a particular type of work, we will work with you so that you are able to still get the type of skills and passion and work on the topics that you are passionate about. So I think that in general, DIS is a pretty good balance between modeling work. And I mean here, modeling to encompass sketch work as well as modeling in terms of computer assisted design, as well as a lot of prototyping and building and tinkering. There is not a single studio that doesn't require students to make at least 3 to 4 prototypes. Sylvia, like I said, so the question is, if they choose to add the dual with DIS now, what are the chances they will get into the program? Like I said, it's the chances are good. I'm not entirely sure what our yield is, but generally we do have positions. So that will be a balance between like the hour yield and the number of seats that we have and the number of additional interested students such as yourself. If you email Kaylee, perhaps Claire, if you could post yours and Kaylee's email. Kaylee can already put you on the wait list for DIS interest. And as soon as the deadline for deposit passes, we will be getting in touch with you like very quickly after that, as soon as we figure out our final numbers. But I would suggest just reaching out to Kaylee so that we can add you to that wait list. We do have a couple of students that have already reached out to us. There's a question here on how does the program integrate with environmental engineering? Darla, you know what? I have not had a dual with environmental engineering, and I would so love to have you. We've had a wide range of engineering duals, including civil engineering and electrical engineering. It integrates in the exact same way across engineering. And the way that integration works is, as I mentioned, through the Haas core. So as an engineering dual, or as an engineering major, you are still required to fulfill the Haas core, those 24 credits of work in the School of Humanities, Arts, and Social Sciences. Plus you have a couple of free electives. The DIS plugs in as the Haas core and as those free electives. I would suggest perhaps reaching out also to Kaylee, and I can work out with Kaylee what a plan of study would look like for you. But I see no issues. We also have biomedical engineering duals that And biomedical engineering is one of the most intense and demanding engineering programs. And even those work out for dualing with DIS. So I can't predict any issues with dualing with environmental engineering. Of course, I know that sometimes it takes a while to digest a lot of information. So I've also placed my own email in the chat. If anybody leaves and wakes up in the morning and is like, now I know what I should have asked, just drop me a line. It's never too late to ask.
You guys had some great questions tonight. And again, I just want to echo that we are so grateful that you chose to spend your evening with us. But if you do have any questions, whether it be on the admissions end or inquiries about adding that dual, the contact information is there. We also recorded this session, so if you want to refer back to it at any point, you can reach out to me and I can coordinate with Professor Velho about getting you that recording. But we are just so thrilled to have you. And we just want to say a big congratulations for all the accepted students. I know that it is crunch time for you guys, but however we can be helpful to you, definitely use us as a resource as you kind of make your college decisions.
Thank you all so much for being here. Please do not hesitate to email any questions. Have a wonderful evening.